Welcome to this episode of A Facilitator's Journey. Today's guest is Jo Cook, and Jo is known in the industry far and wide for many different things. And in no particular order, she is the creator and founder of Lightbulb Moments, which is a virtual training business. She is the editor of Training Journal. She manages conferences, or helps to create conferences now, which I find fascinating. And she's a good all-round human being who I've just discovered lives up the road from me. So today's conversation, we're going to cover Jo's journey and everything in between, of how she started as a journalist to how she's got to having her business with multiple income streams. So you know the drill, team. Go get a cuppa, come and join me on the big pink seat and tune in your ears. Enjoy today's episode. Hey, Jo.
Hello, Kirsty. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. And welcome to A Facilitator's Journey. So, Jo, the first question I ask everybody at the beginning is, how do we know each other?
I've been thinking about this because I knew you were going to ask it, and I don't have a very good answer, other than it must have been in social media
Absolutely.
land at some point, and we were in, the facilitation circles, and we got in contact, and this is where we ended up.
I have a feeling if knowing me, I found you on LinkedIn, because you're more prevalent on LinkedIn than Instagram, I think. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
And so I've found you on LinkedIn, and then I've just basically tracked you down.
Maybe.
But I
people
think
track me down, I track people down. That's half the fun of it.
I think it probably happened. I'm trying to find our last conversation. There we go. I reckon it was around 2018, 2019.
I think that could be right, because it was definitely before COVID, because we were chatting about, because I think you were newer to the world of virtual.
Yes.
And I remember talking to you about that. And then obviously during COVID, you, like everybody else, did the massive leap into it, did an amazing job. So yeah, it was definitely around then.
And I remember also you came and ran like a webinar with me, which is found on YouTube still, under the School of Facilitation channel. And we were talking about virtual, I'm pretty sure. Yes. I can visualize where I was. So that's how we know each other, and no one will be surprised who's listening to this and who knows me that I stalked you and found you. Because honestly, I think it's okay if you find someone or like a topic that is interesting and is relevant to you. I think if we approach people politely in the internet land and go, hey, I'm so-and-so and this is what I do, and I'd really love to have a conversation with you, and be very clear about what the conversation is, not I'd like to pick your brains. What happened? Yeah. I'm really curious, Jo, when you get those sort of messages, because I get them a lot, and that's very lovely, but when someone says, can I pick your brains? What's your reaction? What goes, I'll tell you what goes through my head in a minute, but what goes through your head?
I think it depends a little bit on the approach.
True. If
it's, can I book 15 or 30 minutes with you to get feedback on my XYZ product platform, I tend to be a bit like, that's consultancy. You kind of probably should be paying me for that. If we're at a networking event and we bump into each other and we're chatting, that's an entirely different thing. But then when somebody maybe just sends a little something through and says, I've got this, whatever it is, can you just have a quick look, or what's your top of mind reflection on it, or something like that, and you can just answer really quickly. It's quicker to answer than it is to say sorry, no, or ignore them. Then absolutely I'll answer, because I want to help people.
I do.
That's deep in my DNA. But some people do just, they're either too indistinct, or they're kind of asking for too much. Really.
Yeah. And I think there's another axis. So like too indistinct or too much, it could be, say, our X. I think there's the Y, which is proximity to knowing that person. So I know them really well, or you're a complete stranger who's just messaged me.
Yeah.
And that definitely.
And it goes in with the LinkedIn thing of just like, I'll connect with you. And the next thing I've got is 3 unsolicited messages about whatever your product or service is. And it's like, I understand that. I'm connecting with people because I want things from them on LinkedIn as well, but I just don't like it when it's approached that way.
Yeah, I think the other thing I've had recently is people then emailing me telling me that my SEO is incorrect, or let me show you how to make it better, and you're just like, no, go away. Sorry, people. Joe, that was me going off on a rant. But Joe, what do you do for those who may have not met you yet? How do you describe what you do?
Now, Murray Cowell, who is at SOFest, would absolutely tell me off, I'm sure, for what I'm about to say, because I'm going to default to what I always say and not the proper kind of honed elevator pitch, which is I have a portfolio career, which means I work for myself in L&D and I do lots of different things for different people. And I really love that. So I run my own company, Lightbulb Moment, where I do learning and development services. Previously, I focused a lot on virtual classroom, train the trainer, and I do other things now around conference stuff, presenting, all sorts of stuff. I'm also editor of Training Journal, so there's a whole piece of work there. And I do other bits and pieces of contracts for different people, largely in the learning, hosting, conference area.
Nice. I like that. So, of those, I think they all bring you joy. What was your first baby?
Well, it would be Lightbulb Moment. It would be L&D. It would be training.
Yeah.
So I trained as a journalist when I was 19, which is now about a million years ago.
Yes, I recognise that.
And I absolutely went down that road. And then I landed in a local college, doing an evening class. And a part of it was massively stressful. I was like Judy Finnegan on speed, which basically just meant I talked really fast and was shaking, for anybody who doesn't know that reference. But by the end, I can remember the feeling now of going, I've landed. This is what I want to do.
I love that feeling.
And I was maybe early 20s, 22 or something by then. And that's what got me into in terms of like the career step, that's what got me into where I am now.
I love that. I think many of us can resonate with that when you get that feeling like that. Oh, this is my thing. You just found it earlier. Yeah. I got mine at about 31 when I was running workshops at Diageo, and I was like,
okay, so not a million years ago.
That's very kind of you. It's about 20 years ago, but it was still a moment of, I like this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not too bad at it either.
Yeah.
But
because you can enjoy something without being good at it.
I know. Yes, that's very true. So you've got multiple income streams, which I absolutely love, and we both absolutely concur we should be doing the work that we enjoy. What's the journey to that point been like, though? Because like you said, you started off as training as a journalist, and we've now got 4 multiple income streams. Amazing. But there's a gap in between that. So
yeah, there's like 30 years in between those two things.
And I'm not. What we're not expecting is a play-by-play of each year. But
okay.
But what?
So in 1997,
sit down, children. Let me begin the story. But it's more a case of like it'd be really interesting, I think, because people go, "How do you go from being a journalist that then sort of gets into training, that then goes, oh, actually." Because when we met, you were definitely, it was light bulb moments.
Yeah.
How do you then get to that, like, diversification? Let's call it that. So let's go on a bit of a Joe journey.
Okay. So the Joe journey begins with always wanted to be a journalist, writing. That was my thing. So went down that route. Had computers when I was a kid, was quite good at that, was naturally good at helping people. And teaching them stuff. And the two kind of came together with 3 or 4 different things happened. And it just brought my worlds together. And that's how I ended up in the classroom. That's how I went, oh, this is it. So, I mean, obviously in L&D, running your own business, working corporately, I still used all those skills. It's just using them in a different way. So that landed me in training, which then landed me about a year or so later in a corporate job. Because education, I was in further and higher education, and that's a whole sector in its own right. It's got its beauties and wonders and its challenges. The main reason I changed is I needed the hours, I needed the work, and I could go and get a full-time job on a full-time wage. So I went and worked in a variety of corporate training roles for I don't know how many years, 5, 7, maybe not 10, I can't remember now, a number of years until I got made redundant. And there was a big realization at this point, because I worked in a big company, and a lot of the people inside the company knew my work ethic, knew what I could do, knew me, and basically I had a good reputation. I was offered a role, didn't want it. It wasn't the right projection for my career. So I decided to take the redundancy. And that's when I started going to conferences like Learning Technologies, for example, just, the free exhibitions and so on. It's when I started doing a blog around that time, because I suddenly realized nobody outside of my company knows anything about me. So therefore, I should get on this weird LinkedIn thing I've heard about. I should do a blog thing, even though for about 5 or 6 years I'd been going, blogs, they're rubbish. Who wants to know what you had for dinner? And then I started one, and various other things along those lines. And I got a contract in another big company for a year. And then after that, I had another opportunity and a couple of other things that came together, including some health issues, that just meant, okay, now is the time to go self-employed. And I'd done that before. When I was 19, I was freelance for a few years. So it wasn't a massive leap. Both my parents ran their own businesses. My dad was a floor and wall tiler. My mum was a childminder. It wasn't a big leap. So I did that. And what are we at? 13 years later or something? I'm still going. And then there's some pivots in the middle, which maybe we'll come back to.
Do you think having parents who are self-employed, run their own businesses, impacts our mindset, and has helped you in a way see what's possible?
I think so, yes, because as I say, it wasn't a big leap. Having been self-employed when I was 19, and then having parents who were self-employed, it wasn't a massive leap. Like, nobody in our house has ever done it. It's scary. But my mum is still very risk averse. So she would still be like, is this the right thing to do? If you were talking about leaving a job, she would be quite worried, understandably. You're going to leave a salary and holiday pay and all of these things and so on. So in some ways, no, but I think mostly yes.
Okay.
Because it's tried and tested. We know how it works. And I don't think I wasn't living at home by the second time, but the first time I was living at home. So it was relatively easy. I was paying rent, but, I'm not paying living on your own rent. So it was easy the first time. And the second time I was living with my boyfriend at the time. So I was still, again, paying rent, had expenses, went through all my redundancy, quite frankly, in 9 months or a year or whatever it was, until I'd started making money with the business.
Yeah.
But it was still a relatively safe place. I wasn't paying a mortgage, which I am now, which is a very different situation.
I hear you. Just on the parental thing. So my parents were babies of the 1948 gene, and they're very risk averse as well. My parents were, and they were had lifelong jobs. My mum was a nurse. My dad worked for British Telecom. And so when I knew I was going to leave corporate land, because they were very proud that I'd got this worked in corporate land.
Imagine.
I didn't tell them for the first 3 months, because I knew their reaction. I needed a plan in place to show them. Not that they're that sort of people that go, well, how are you going to do this? But I wanted to say, look, I've thought this one through. This isn't a whim.
And we don't want them to worry.
Yeah.
Because we're grown up.
Yeah. And I think for anyone who's listening to this, who's thinking, I am planning to leave an organization or corporate world to set up my own business, absolutely go for it. But go with a plan. Please don't do it on a whim. And yes, if you're getting a redundancy package, that is just brilliant. That is a really beautiful cushion to have financially. I appreciate, there's mental stuff that comes with that, emotional baggage.
It was really horrible when I had to go through it.
I'm sure, because there's a whole question mark of, oh, what have I done? Why is it me? As one thing. But please have a plan. Yeah, just before you escape is my thinking on, or if you're not even taking redundancy and you resign.
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful with the word plan. So when you're in corporate land, you get lots of corporate training days. And there are many of them are like, who's a leader you admire, who's your hero, what's your 10-year career plan, all of this kind of stuff. And that I always felt quite bad because I didn't really have easy answers to that.
Nor did I. I'd always go, I don't know what I want to do in 10 years' time.
And so I thought that was wrong. I thought that was, that I was missing something and all of those different things. It was only many, many years later, with a lot of experience, a lot of reading self-development books and all of, the experience that we get in the roles that we have, I went, oh no, that's me. I'm creative. I'm organic. I'm, in alignment with my inner self, or whatever way you want to put that. And I always had some kind of vision and found a way to do it. And I didn't know that at the time, but as I look back, that's what happened. So I didn't have this 5-year plan. I still don't have a plan. I have a kind of, okay, the next few years, I'd like this kind of thing to happen, and I'm going to work towards it. But it's not a plan in the sense of 3 months, 6 months, and that for some people that's brilliant and go for it and they thrive on it.
Yeah.
For me, that feels restricting and like failure if I don't do it.
Do you think instead, so something more is like an intention or a felt sense of this is how I want to be, this is how I want to feel?
Yeah. I did that when we were house hunting. It was I envisaged, and I don't mean this in some big, weird spiritual way. It was just close your eyes, imagine what you want your house to be like. Yeah. And I'm, you know me, I'm tall, I'm big. I have a medical condition that makes me clumsy. So it's just like, I want big rooms. I want, as far as within my budget, I want high ceilings. I want big windows with lots of light. And I ended up with, within my budget, a version of that.
Brilliant.
And I think that's the thing that you look for. If you kind of set your intention, then that's what you're looking for, because you're saying, I want to find it.
And it helps your brain find it, because if we don't tell the brain where to go, it makes up its own story. So I guess in the plan, for some people, that is a step 1, 2, 3, 4. For others, it's intention of what I would like. And I'm very much like that. An exercise that I have done with others and myself quite a few times is draw your best week. Like, what would the ideal week be that fills you full of joy? And it's not just from a work point of view, it's like, it's holistic. Yeah. And that's a really lovely exercise, because it starts to make you see, well, what are the parts that I would like included? And then you do a step back. Okay, so where am I now? Where is that? And what can I be doing to bridge the gap? Yeah. So there's some things there. In terms of, you mentioned the word pivot. So you went on your journey, you set up light bulb moments, and that's when we definitely knew each other to begin with. What changed? Let's say it's 2018 to now, that has now brought this different structure. It's not just about light bulb moment.
So obviously we had COVID.
That we did.
Some people may remember COVID. And quite frankly, my business went really well because my focus was on digital learning, on virtual classrooms. And I worked constantly because there were so many people to help and so many people crying out for help. And so luckily we had loads of resources out there already. We shared some more. And so my brother was working with me at the time. His name's Mike. And I remember at one point he spent, I think, a whole week or whatever it was, just literally going through all of our resources that we had out there and doing social media posts saying, if you need a facilitator guide, here's one. If it's your first time, here's one. If you're doing it in Teams, here's this. And just putting it all out there. And of course, we were helping all sorts of organizations who were phoning up and saying, we have to deliver this training on X date because it's mandated by the US Medical Board or whatever it is. So you have to help us do that because we have to do it. And it's like, okay, here we go. And at one point, I think I'd worked 18 days straight, something like that. I was working on average 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day. And so, I got very jealous when people saying, oh, I've learned French. Yeah. And I've been baking. And it's just like, I basically sat at my desk, eaten takeaway pizza and gone to bed. That's what I've done. But it was really positive to help so many people. So that happened. But what I was worried about at the time was that the bottom would fall out of the virtual classroom training industry, not virtual classroom use, but my job of train the trainer for virtual classrooms. And it didn't happen when I thought it would, but it was a little bit later. So then a little bit later on, I don't know, 3 years later, something like that, a few things came together. One is everybody could do virtual because everybody could load Teams or Zoom, share a screen and talk at people. Not necessarily well, not to our standards, but from a basic point of view, they can get online, they can share stuff. There was the financial climate just went crazy, went really tight. Everyone was worried about budgets. Budgets were cut. And you had the beginning of the AI juggernaut, as I call it, coming along. So if you've got a cut budget, you've got this AI thing breathing down your neck, and your people can get on Zoom or Teams or whatever and deliver, why are you going to hire me and pay me reasonably good money to tell people how to do something, even though they need it to be better? Why would you do that? So my business just dried up. We had nothing in the pipeline. I think we had 2 sales in whatever time period it was, 4 months, something like that. And they were from contacts I had. So we'd spent, in round numbers, 10 grand on a new website, a research report, another report I did, including perhaps the time involved in that as well. So it's not hard cash, but a lot of hard cash and a lot of time. And I didn't have one piece of work that I could link back to that spend, which was a bit scary when you've just spent all this money and time. We'd rewritten our courses, so they were then kind of fit for where we were now. And it just got to a point where there was no work. So you have to do something.
Yeah.
And I couldn't physically go back and do a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. Also, I don't want to, but there's want and there's need. They're 2 different things. But physically, that was something I couldn't do. So then you have to pivot. And that's what you have to do.
So what did you do to pivot?
Well, one was, sadly, my brother left the business because we ran out of money. And we'd been talking about it all year. We knew it was coming unless something had changed. That's why we were working so hard on changing it. It's not like we were just sitting there going, okay, it's coming.
Yeah.
And we'd got to, I think I paid the wages, and then we were looking forward to the next month. And it's just like, okay, so we need £1,000 each to pay us because we're doing that, minimum tax threshold payment plus dividends thing. We've got the accountant bill is 1,500, so we need basically at least 3,500 for next month, plus the running of the subscriptions and all those things. So it's probably 4,000 we need for next month. We've got 2,000 in the bank, no work and no pipeline. So it's just like, well, that's the end then. It's just like, I can't leave my business because it's my business and it's my specialism. Mike, my brother, did all the VAT, the accounting, the invoicing. Right. He was my producer. He did great stuff, but he didn't have my knowledge. So if there's no sense me leaving the business. So it was him, and it was a month earlier than we thought it might be. So all of a sudden, even though we had no work, I still had lots of work to do. Because all of a sudden, all of the stuff he used to do was my job, and I was still trying to get work in. And the pivot came in accepting the work that was available. So the month or 6 weeks prior to this, I'd had several things come in. Usually it was people saying, do you know someone who can? I was like, well, I can do that. And my brother had convinced me not to do those things because we should be focusing on the business.
Right.
And it's like, I get that, because every time I take a project that isn't our core theme, every time I do a day in a week for something that isn't what we do at Lightbulb Moment virtual classroom training, it's diluting that work. But it got to a point where I was like, we have no money.
Yeah.
So I have to go and earn some money because I'm the earner for 2 wages. And I'll be honest, I got a bit annoyed with him because I'd suggested a contract that he could go and do, which was some production work. And he wouldn't do it. And he said, no, I've got to focus on the business. And I think there was a bit of scared stuff in there. He hasn't said this, I think this, because he'd only ever been my producer and it was for an external client and stuff. But I took on that work afterwards, and not every month, but there were some months where I was earning £2,000 or £3,000 a month just through that income stream. There are months where I've gone 3 or 4 months and earned nothing with them. It's how it works. It's just like, if he was doing that, or if we were both doing that, because at some points the work was there, he could still have been working for the company, still within the realms of what we do. Other work has come in afterwards. It just wasn't there at the time. So basically, he left the company. Not all, but a lot of the opportunities that had been coming my way, I then took. And that was the pivot. So that's where Training Journal came from, and various other contracts that I'm doing.
How is it working with a sibling? Because I've never had that conversation with anyone on this podcast so far.
It's interesting, it's challenging, it's brilliant, depending on what point you're at.
Yeah. So
it was really funny when we first started and we were telling our friends in the pub, and they were like, don't go and work with Jo. She's a B word. It will never work out.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just like, you're my friend. Do you think? Yeah. And for 6 years, it did work out.
Yeah.
So it's not like it failed. There came a point where it wasn't right anymore, but it did work. And a lot of the time, it was really good because we spoke every day. We were really similar and worked a lot of similar ways, but we were different in other ways. We had arguments. There are times we had personal arguments, but still had to work with each other, which was always interesting. Yeah. And it's just like, can I have this document for such and such? I type on Skype, here it is, link, rather than like, yeah, no problem. But it's just like, it still worked. There were times where we would dump on each other of stuff that's going on. And that wasn't fair to each other. There were times he was nasty to me, but wanting, intentionally trying to be nice.
Yeah.
There were probably times I did the same. But if you ask me now, it's hard because, again, I'm going to be really honest, we're not talking. And that's largely because of stuff that's happened with the business.
That's hard.
And I will absolutely hold my hands up that a lot of it was stuff that I did or didn't do, or, looking back, I would do differently. Yeah. I wasn't necessarily wrong to do what I did, but I would do it differently. And there are things that he's done that he hopefully would do differently
as well.
But we're not at the point where we're talking yet. And that's really sad because we used to talk every single day.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Family businesses are, there's a vibe. I've done a lot of systemic constellation training, and in the organizational side, when you work with family businesses, you have to consider the dynamic of the family first, then the business. And sometimes companies aren't even aware of that, though. They just go, well, it's all the same. You're like, well, no, it's not, though, because the family system came first and then the organization system came second. But can we separate them out? And endings.
And he knew me as a sister before he knew me as a colleague.
Absolutely.
And likewise.
Yeah. And then the whole conversation about endings is a fascinating one on so many different levels, isn't it? And so, well, maybe it's not ended. This is a pause at this point.
Yes. Let's hope it's just an elongated pause.
I like that, elongated.
And I've just kind of, it's interesting because, as with all dynamics, and I don't want to say codependent, I don't think it's that bad, but you take on things, you react to things in certain ways. And again, through self-development and books and podcasts and reading and all of those good things, I'd come to a point when we were having a particular argument, however, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, whenever it was, that I was just like, I'm not taking this on. This is your stuff. And it was like, I'll take responsibility for the bit that I did, but all the rest of that is you. And I'm not going to entertain it. I'm not going to ruminate on it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm just going to leave that with you. And at some point in life, things will shift and we'll come back together again. I'm hoping. And that would be lovely. But no, I wouldn't work with family again. To be fair, none of them would work with me, so that's okay.
Just thinking if I could work with my brothers. I don't know, there'd have to be a lot of conversations up front about ways of working and boundaries and how we would manage it. I might talk to them about it and go, how would that work? Not that it's even a possibility, by the way, because we all do very different things in our worlds. So, but yeah, that's made me think. And I wonder if anyone else is listening to this, and if you work with your mom, your dad, a sibling, a cousin,
partner,
partner, tell us what's that like. Well, we've had a few people. Catherine Nicholson and her husband John. Yeah, tell us what it's like to work with a family member. I am now very curious, so I'd love to do another podcast on that. You said when it was that sort of crunch point period of time, this is a question that I sort of think is important for all of us to sort of think about. Were there any projects that came up that you thought, yeah, it's okay, but I'm going to take it because I need to pay the bills?
Oh yeah, definitely at crunch time. When you're in abundance, when you're busy, you can say no to things that, quite frankly, you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And I am very, very, very grateful that I'm now in a position where I'm able to say no to things. So I'm working over capacity at the moment. Yeah. And I need to bring things down again a bit. And that's, I'm very grateful to be in that position. It's still a problem.
It's a different problem. With. Yeah.
Yeah. I always call it, it's a good problem to have, is how I describe it. But definitely there were a few clients that came along. So there were a few pitches and one client where the company themselves, because of what they do, I had to debate, do I want this work? And I went for the pitches anyway, because that's what you do. And then I got one piece of work. And I did have that moment of, do I want to be in any way, shape or form associated with this company? And as I said earlier on, I'm paying a mortgage now. So the answer was yes, I do. And they're not that evil, but, they're not.
Maybe they didn't have a values piece is like the connection at a values level. It's like, yeah, that's where I sometimes notice it. It's like, do we have the same values?
And what I looked at was, it's, I'm not enabling the company to do the things that publicly people don't like. Mm-hmm. In fact, the opposite. My work is a tiny, tiny part of helping L&D to help people internally. So the way I looked at it is, we're talking like the tiniest cog in a million cog machine. But if I can be one cog that helps for the positive work in that company, then that's got to be a good thing.
And I think that's sometimes what we need to think about. So whilst it would be good to be able to say no to all projects that don't serve us or don't sit within our value sets, that for sometimes there has to, one that would be a no has to be a yes. And I think you have to go through that conversation in your head though, and like work out, well, how am I going to reconcile that back for myself? Interesting. Jo, a couple of times you've mentioned like, and I'm going to get the language wrong, and it's not an illness, but like a medical condition. And can you talk to us about what that is and what it means for you in your world of work?
Yes. I have something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS. And it's a group of connective tissue disorders. There's anywhere between 7 and 13 different types, depending on what you read and what research has come out. So there's the type I've got is hyperflexibility. Sadly, I can't do the party tricks anymore of bending my thumb back or anything like that. But that's one type. There's lots of other types as well. And it's a mutation of the collagen in my DNA.
Wow.
And basically what it means is my ligaments don't really work properly to hold me up, to move me. So therefore my muscles take over and they're working overtime. So most people have done some version of going to the gym, going on a hike, whatever it might be, where you've overexerted yourself one day. And the next day, you're just like, oh, I can't move my lower back, or your legs are really tight. You're lowering yourself on the loo, whatever it is. Every time you reach for a cup of coffee, your shoulder hurts. I've basically got that all the time. So that's what happens is your body overcompensates. Also, it's a connective tissue disorder. And your whole body is connective tissue, which is why there's so many different types. So one of my friends has a different type of EDS to me, and she's got terrible hip problems, terrible heart problems. She's in a wheelchair. She can only work kind of a day a week. So there's lots of different things going on. It can affect your swallowing, your eyes, your bowels, your stomach, absolutely everything.
Bloody hell.
It's not fun, I'll be honest. I do have a less horrific version of it than some of my friends. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm not technically disabled. I describe it as mobility issues. Because it's things like, on a good day, I could be okay. On a bad day, stairs are a problem. And things like your joints subluxate, which means like they pop out.
Okay.
So the way I kind of explained this to someone recently is, imagine you're at the top of a set of stairs. You're going to step down and you don't know if your ankle is going to be floppy when you stand on it, and therefore you fall down the stairs. And so that's why I'm slow on stairs, and I take them one at a time, and I hold the handrail and stuff like that. And I always use the disabled toilet if I can.
Yeah.
And things. So it's stuff like that. So in terms of how that affects me at work, there's a very obvious thing. If you've got that post-gym pain, or DOMS as they call it, delayed onset muscle, whatever it is, fatigue or stress, whatever it's called. And you're probably tired the next day because you've overexerted at the gym or whatever you do. And that's how I feel. So I feel tired, and that affects me physically and cognitively. So there are some days where I book in, right, I'm going to do a load of editing for TJ and get stuff up on the website. But that's quite technical. You've got to make sure you click the right buttons, and it's very public. So the days I have fatigue, that might not be the best thing for me to do.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden there's spelling errors, and, I've got the wrong author attached to an article. Also, what it means is that my days can be challenging in the fact that I could have a massive headache. So I get lots of headaches with my EDS because all my back and neck muscles get tight, which gives me a headache. So yesterday's a really good example. About 3 o'clock, I was like, I can't sit at my desk anymore, and I've got a sit-stand desk, I've got a decent chair, I've got loads of aids. So I had to go and deal with that. But 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock that night, I felt better. So I worked till midnight. So, it's one of those things. And some of my work, or most of the work I do, I should say, works out that way because I can do it within reason when I want to. I've got a training class scheduled on Friday. I have to do that on Friday, and it's very rare that I've cancelled those. But the big boss at TJ, when I interviewed with him, because it was remote, because it was part-time, and because of, I disclosed this, he's like, I don't care where or when you work, just as long as the work gets done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last somebody who thinks that.
Yeah.
So that's a
big
nutshell to answer your question.
No, it's really useful. And I think it's because there is so much more visibility now of the differences of like in this instance, a physical mobility thing. And as facilitators and trainers, if we are working in person, we need to be aware of those pieces for others. And I think it's more a case of, is this fair to say that it's a good idea to be in all our invites always saying to people, how can I make this a good experience for you, and giving people an easy way to share what they need?
Yes, I think so. And I think in some countries, you have to be quite careful how you ask these questions, like legally.
Oh, right.
I tend to ask along the lines of, is there anything I can help you with? Even if I just knowing it might help me.
Ooh.
So when I fill in those things for in-person stuff, and often they do ask these days, which is really good, do you have any, disabilities or something? I often say, I'm not disabled, I have mobility issues, as long as there's a lift or, maybe cushions for uncomfortable chairs. Yeah. Because the reality is you're not going to have chairs that I'm going to be comfortable on to sit at your conference all day.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. But if you've got a cushion or a couple of places in different ways I can sit, or whatever it might be, I can at least manage that.
Yeah.
And then it's up to me to manage my situation, to make sure I don't work too much before, to make sure I've got the day off afterwards booked off to relax and things. That's my job. But just being aware of those things. And I think it's so hard when you don't suffer with anything to imagine what it's like for someone else.
You can't.
But I've definitely been in situations where I've been told, no, you'll be absolutely fine. It's not strenuous, or it's not whatever. And then something happens. You're like, okay, so we've just spent 20 minutes walking around a field without appropriate footwear, and there's loads of like rabbit holes, and it's not like a nice flat field or grass. I've been carrying my great big bag with me because you told me to bring all this stuff. It's like, now I'm lopsided in my shoulders. I'm scared that I'm going to roll an ankle, and for me that would probably mean break it. It's just like, and all this stuff. It's like, for you, Kirsty,
yeah,
that is absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
For me, that was a nightmare. So, it would almost in some ways be easier if you were in a wheelchair, because everybody can physically see that.
And then it's like, it's a visual signal.
Yeah. And it's easy. It's just like, oh, right, wheelchairs can't navigate steps. That's easy.
Yeah.
But when you're anywhere in the middle, and I think this is the trouble with a lot of people who've got anything as an invisible disability.
Yeah.
And things like neurodivergence, and because it's so different for people, is how do you deal with that? And a lot of the times when we don't know, we end up kind of doing like, talk to the hand. I'm not going to deal with it because then I don't have to worry about it. But unfortunately, that has an impact on people.
What do you think? My brain, I know this is about running our businesses, but my brain is going to workshops and learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what can people do who, like me, are very fortunate and don't have a disability? What can we be doing to understand more? I think it's probably a start point.
So I think listening to things like this, there's all sorts of stuff on YouTube, Facebook, Insta, TikTok, wherever you want to go. If you just put in and search, what's it like to be disabled? How can I help a disabled person? Maybe look up a particular thing, because things like EDS, most people haven't heard of. It's really rare. But most people have heard of like ME or fibromyalgia, and it's sort of similar to some of those things, is how I put it. The other thing you can do is you can look up that there are activities that you can do to make it feel like that. So I've seen some on the internet where people put on like really heavy shoes, or they put on like a coat that's too small that restricts them, and put on goggles to reduce their vision. And it's just like, this is what it's like to be maybe 80, for example. And then go and walk around, try and get the train somewhere or the bus somewhere, where you're dragging your feet and that kind of thing. So there's some physical things you could do if you wanted to as well. But also most people have had the flu, for example. So if you think of how you felt when you had the flu, if that's how I feel, maybe on a medium day, maybe not every day, maybe not on a good day, but you imagine you're hot and cold, you're shaking, you can't get off the sofa. If somebody had the lottery ticket and waved it under your face,
I don't
you wouldn't
care.
have the energy to put your arm up. You don't care. That's probably how I feel when I'm in a fatigue kind of slump.
Okay.
So it's things like that. You can imagine that, but times it by every afternoon or whatever.
Wow. That is food for thought, Joe. One thing about EDS, you say not everyone hears about it. If anyone has read Fourth Wing, which is a series of fantasy books, the main character has EDS.
Oh, really?
However, I think I'm right in saying that. However, now I've heard your true felt experience versus the fictional character. She's always been taped up, but she is always just a little bit more physically able, which now makes me think it's still not a true to life. However,
well, there's like with things like neurodivergence, there's a wide spectrum.
I know, but
there are some people I know with EDS who've got full-time jobs, they run marathons, they're doing great.
Wow.
There are some people I know who are bedbound. Wow. So it's a really broad spectrum. And as I say, if there's something like 13 different types,
wow.
It's kind of challenging. So that could be very accurate, or it could be optimistic.
I appreciate your education. I feel very educated on this. Now, she's just taking a drink. If you're listening to this, Joe's taking a drink out of her training journal mug. I feel like this is an appropriate point to say, if you've missed anything to do with SOFest, Training Journal is our media sponsor, which is amazing. So I guess this is a really good place for me to say thanks, Joe, for believing in SOFest, and even more exciting to announce you're coming back next year.
Yes.
To walk around the field.
Thank you for inviting me to come to your field. That was delightful.
A field, by the way, that doesn't have too many rabbit holes?
No, it was pretty good.
Okay,
it was
good.
pretty good. The walking was good on those fields.
Okay. So let's just have a quick chat about Training Journal and SOFest though. Like what made it a good fit from your point of view? Because I think that's just useful to share.
It was partly I know you, but it's not about, Joe's friends.
No.
That's
really clear. If anyone from Training Journal is listening to this, Joe does not hand out sponsorships willy-nilly.
I mean, Joe does have lots of friends.
Joe has a lot of friends.
More now, it must be said. No, it was partly you, and I know what your work is like anyway. So it's just like, right, there's the bit, the due diligence, if you like, is kind of done. But the bit that made me go, yes, I want to get involved in this and support it was, I think it was one of your very first emails that you'd sent out to your mailing list, basically saying, I'm going to do this thing and I have no idea how to do it. And behind the scenes, this and this is going on. And you were just completely open and honest about it. And I just thought that's really interesting because most people don't make conferences. Most people don't do that. A training session and a training day or week, there's a dotted line to doing a conference, but what you were doing was really quite different and quite exploratory, and your openness and honesty. And I thought that would be really interesting. Plus the event was interesting and I wanted to support that.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of a few of those different things. And that's what I see when I want to be media partner or sponsor with organizations is, what's the event? Is it interesting? Will it be exciting to people that follow TJ? Will it be useful for them? And is there, it doesn't have to be like a unique point of view, but is there a something that makes it useful and interesting?
And so all last year I wrote a monthly blog for Training Journal, as Joe said, a behind the scenes sharing with the readers. And maybe that's some of you listening to this about what was going on. We'll work out something for this year. Maybe I'll just continue the behind the scenes because there is still, like, this is year 2, but it's still learning, and it's the same and different this year. So I think I will blog about it and I will talk about it for sure. TJ and SOFest, little match made in heaven, which is very, very exciting. So thank you, Jay, for being our partners in Chrome, and I'm looking forward to having you back in the field in 2026. If you're listening to this, tickets are now available. This episode should be going out in September, and if you're listening to this and want to know more, the early bird tickets are available until September the 31st. But Joe, what else is happening in the Training Journal world that you'd like to tell us?
Well, TJ this year, if you can believe it, TJ is 60 years old.
Wow.
This year. Yeah, she is a lady with some wisdom. And some grey hair and a couple of wrinkles, but she's doing good for her age, I reckon. And so what I'm doing is, in November, I'm running a 60th anniversary conference for TJ. It's one day, it's in London. There will be tickets available if you go to the Training Journal website, sign up to the newsletter, all the information will be there. We've got Laura Overton is our keynote, and I want it all to be about how L&D is an enabler. I want it to be really positive, really action focused. So I'm very excited about that. And I have a tiny bit of the understanding of your pain for doing a conference. That kind of like, what's my budget? Where do we go? How do I fit? Because you want all of your favorite speakers, but then it's just like, well, I'd need to do a year conference to get everyone in who I wanted, and I've got a day.
Yeah.
So I'm now feeling just a tiny hint of your pain.
Do you have a date yet that you can share?
Yes, Monday the 24th of November.
Okay, people, Monday the 24th of November. Also, we will put a link into the Training Journal website in the show notes so people can find that.
And also, you'll be there because you're going to do a little Ignite session for me, aren't you?
Yeah.
Although you just found out what
I thought that went like, do a bit of a zhuzhi rah. She's now told me I've got 5 minutes, 20 slides, and I have to talk on this subject. I'm like, oh, okay. Click, click, click. I am debating whether I can ditch the slides and draw you flip charts.
Yeah, you can ditch the slides. I'll let you do that.
I might do flip charts.
But it was the concept was lots of different people talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
on something. So I imagine you might talk about the community SOFest kind of thing, because that's so important and been so good. But then other people will talk about accessibility, or, I don't know what they're going to talk about, because I've said as long as it's L&D based and positive, it's up to you. But it's just nice. I think it's great to have a keynote for 45 minutes or however long it's going to be. But also, it's nice to hear different opinions and from different people as well.
Yeah.
So, and I want people to hear about the work that you do. So
brilliant.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. So Joe and I could talk, as you can tell, forever and a day, but I'm really conscious of the time. Not to cut us short, we could carry on, but I am not in the Seth Rogen, what's his name? Anyway, 3-hour conversations. I just feel that's very self-indulgent and ego. So let's do the quick fire questions, Joe.
Okay.
What advice would you give to someone starting out?
Starting out with their own business?
Yeah, doing this.
Oh, I want to say have a plan. And I said that whole thing earlier on about don't have a plan. That's what came to mind. No, I think it's have people, have systems, have processes. It's people. Get your network together and don't rush into it. Build things up.
Nice.
Yeah, don't rush. Build things up. Get your network.
I love that. Who do you follow on social media land that you think others should too?
Oh, lots of people, obviously, including you and a number of your other guests that you've had. One thing in particular I like following is The Learning Scientist. They've got podcasts, blog, newsletter that comes out, I think, every Friday afternoon. It's a little bit more on the academic kind of education side, but they cover learning science. So that's right up my street.
Okay, we'll go find that one. And what book do you recommend, or podcast?
The book is The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. There you go. Prepared for those on video. I'm holding it up to have a look at. It's a really good book. It's not business. It's not learning and development. It's not science. The Art of Gathering is what it says it is. And what Priya Parker does is she looks at why people come together and how you can make that a good thing and how you can make it intentional. It's a really lovely read. Lots of great stories.
Oh my God. I've got my copy sitting over my shoulder and in my bookcase. And so I turn all my pages down when I find something interesting that I want to go back to, except with that book, every single bloody page looks like it's turned over. If you've got it on your bookshelf and you haven't picked it up yet, please make some time to start reading it. If this is your first time hearing about The Art of Gathering, go get it and give yourself a couple of days to read it, because it is such a good read.
Once you start, you won't want to
stop.
Exactly. It's like a really good novel in that sense. You want to hear the next nugget story.
And if you're the kind of person who likes to write notes, have a pen and paper ready. Final question, Joe. How have you invested in yourself or your business to support you in moving forward?
Really good question. Self-development in terms of me, and that's whatever works for you. That could be books, podcasts, therapy, training courses, retreats, whatever works for you is really important. And I think the other thing in terms of my business, it's really focusing on learning the details of running a business. And it's largely by doing it, is just getting on with the marketing and going, okay, how am I going to do this newsletter thing? And so on. It's learning by doing, which is absolutely one of the best ways, as we all know. Getting it wrong. And joining communities like the SOFest community, there's always someone in there saying, how do I do this? And loads of other people with suggestions, including me on both sides of that story. So it's learning from others. It's that network again, which is really important.
Brilliant. Joe, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I loved this conversation.
I know, it's great. We could carry on, but we'll be good to our listeners and go.
People don't need more hours of me.
Or me. So thank you, Joe, for being here. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, I love that conversation with Joe. What I really like about Jo is her openness and honesty to different situations that we heard about there. So the fact that she had to pivot because she recognized that her business wasn't fitting the marketplace anymore, and taking those bold steps to find some new income streams, having that difficult conversation with her brother about who has to leave the business. Never easy. And as we heard there, still isn't easy. Her sharing about the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and the impact that has on her physically. I don't think I was truly aware of the nuances of that syndrome, and therefore how easy it is for Jo to get hurt, and the impact it has on her day-to-day life in terms of just that example of the headaches or the physical drain. But how exciting. Yes, Training Journal is going to be back with SOFest in 2026, and we're going to be writing articles. And so I just really encourage you, go find Training Journal if you haven't discovered it already. The website's free. There's loads of articles on there all about, training, as it says, learning, development. If you want to write for them as well, I'd encourage you to connect with Jo. She's always looking for articles to be written and created. So thank you for joining me and Jo on this episode of A Facilitator's Journey. If you enjoyed it, please hit like, hit a star. If you're able to leave us a comment, more comments, the better. And if you're looking for SOFest information, go to the website, www.schooloffacilitation.com/SOFest. All the information is there. I'd love you to come join us in the field and be part of the 2026 celebrations. See you again in a couple of weeks.